I received a question from one of my students, Whitney, and this is what she asked. How do you fine-tune research data to create a blog? I often write blogs about unfamiliar topics. I research the topic to educate myself and to create content. However, I tend to get off track and add too much data. Then I find my writings too broad. How do you stay focused and streamline research data when writing about unfamiliar topics? Well, that's a really great question, Whitney, and I think what you're grasping at here is what journalists call the need to find your angle. Your angle is the way you tell the story, your particular take on it that makes it different. For example, let's say there's just been an announcement about another royal wedding. Now, you wouldn't want to write everything I know about the royal wedding. You'd want to narrow your focus, and that narrowed focus will very much depend on what your reader's interested in. Because remember, the best writing is all about meeting the reader's needs and desires. So, for example, if you're a journalist and you're the paper's gardening correspondent, your angle might be about the flowers. If you're the finance editor, it'll be about the money side of the big day. Or if you're a local reporter on a local paper, you'll want a local angle. But finding your angle isn't just important for journalists, it's also a crucial part of the process from everyone from bloggers to academics. For example, compare this overly broad essay title with this much more specific paper title. Now, you may not even know what value investing, homemade leverage, or hold to maturity and counting are. But the reader who's interested in just one of those angles is going to find the writer of this paper much more engaging than the writer who's taking the broad brush approach, which risks saying nothing by trying to say everything. Now, a great way to find your angle is to use mind maps. Now, I think mind maps are a terrible idea for structuring a story, but for generating ideas and helping you decide where to focus your research, they're fantastic. And to demonstrate this process in action, I want to call Dave, who's standing behind the camera there. I'm going to call him to help me demonstrate this process because Dave has got an idea for a blog post that he'd like to write, but needs help with his angle. Come on, Dave.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Dave. Right, so tell me, what's your idea for the blog post?
Right, I want to write a blog post about brewing beer.
Brewing beer, so
Yes.
homebrew.
Home brewing.
Home brewing, okay. So that's our big topic. Now, that's a pretty broad topic, I would imagine.
It is.
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to say anything terribly interesting if you just write everything I know about homebrewing.
No.
So what are our potential aspects of homebrewing that we might explore?
Okay, well, if you're completely new to home brewing, you would want to know about equipment. The equipment needed to brew.
Okay.
And, of course, the ingredients.
Ingredients,
are very important.
yeah. So, okay, anything else?
And then you'd probably want to explore types of beer.
Types
the
of
types
beer.
of beer
You might want to brew, yeah?
Yeah.
Anything else?
And maybe the characteristics of those beers.
Characteristics? Well, that might be an offshoot of this, maybe.
Yeah.
Characteristics. Okay, think about the ingredients. So, the ingredients of beer, remind me, are water's one of them, yeah?
It's really simple. Water.
Okay. Yeah.
Hops.
Hops.
And malt.
I think there's one more, isn't there?
Yeast.
Okay, what about equipment? What sort of equipment would you typically need to use?
Okay, first thing you need is a water boiler.
Water boiler.
You've got to boil a lot of water.
Sounds like fun.
It is a lot of fun. Then you're going to need what's called a mash tun.
A mash tun.
Yeah, that sounds really exotic, doesn't it?
It does.
And then after that, you're going to need a fermentation vessel. Said vessel instead of bucket. Sounds more technical.
Vessel. Fermentation vessel. Okay. Yeah, bucket sounds slightly like something you'd have in the backyard.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Any other bits of equipment?
There's lots of little other ancillary pieces of equipment, but that I think is the main thing. We have a fermentation, but
maybe we'd have a category here: bits and bobs.
Yeah, you're going to want a thermometer. You're going to need sterilising equipment.
Okay. Actually, one thing I've realised we don't have here, we've got equipment, ingredients, types. We might want to add a third or fourth at this level, one which would be process.
Right. Yes.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So let's pick. So we've got our big category, homebrew, and then we've got equipment, types, ingredients, and process. And off each of those, we've got these smaller. So we're getting narrower and narrower. Let's pick one of these. So maybe let's pick yeast.
Okay.
What might be the things that are interesting about yeast?
Okay. Well, different types of yeast are used to create different types of beer. So the yeast has a lot of input into how your beer's going to be.
So types and flavour.
Yes.
So the effect of the type of beer on flavour. Okay. Yeah. Anything else? I mean, yeast is a living organism.
It is.
Is it easy to...
Yeah, we could talk about the types of yeast that are available. There's dried yeasts and there are liquid yeasts that you can use.
So how to store.
And how to store them, yeah. Dried yeast is very simple to store. Liquid yeasts you generally, I guess, want to keep cool. Yeast can be quite awkward in that it activates at certain temperatures, so we'd have to talk about temperature.
Okay.
Temperature of the beer. That's part of the process.
Okay, temperature. Okay. Okay. Anything else about yeast?
We could talk about problems that you can get with yeast.
Okay, we're digging down into yeast here. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start a new mind map that's just about yeast.
Okay.
Okay. So let's have yeast. And what did we have coming up? We had how to store.
How to store.
Types and flavour.
Yeah.
Okay. And that had liquid or dry. Types and flavour. What was the other?
We could talk about problems with yeast.
Problems. So what are the problems?
Well, one of the problems that homebrewers can come across, it's not terribly common, but you can get what's called a stuck fermentation, where the yeast simply refuses to continue fermenting your beer. So you end up with a partially fermented beer.
Okay. Recalcitrant yeast.
Yeah, precisely. And there are a number of things you can do in that situation. One of the things you can do, and it's very useful with big beers like stouts, because they're quite difficult to ferment, is you can get something called yeast nutrient, which helps the yeast. It boosts the yeast's processes and helps the fermentation, basically.
They only cooperate if you feed them.
Yeah, they're tricky, pesky little things.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Anything else about yeast?
We've talked about types and flavours, problems, how to store.
What about...
We were going to talk about temperatures as well.
Temperatures, okay. So it might be, you might have another category here, which is looking after.
Yes. You can also harvest yeast. Rather than having to buy yeast every time you brew a beer, you can wash and keep yeast from previous fermentations.
Right,
It's a little involved and time consuming, but if you're a keen homebrewing hobbyist, you might find that very interesting.
So, and why you might do it,
Yeah,
what it involves.
yeah. Again, there's more equipment involved with that.
Equipment, okay. Okay. So we've gone from a really big topic, everything Dave knows about homebrew, and we've ended up focusing just on yeast, but you could explore any of these
Sure.
offshoots.
Yeah.
And what this has given us, this is potentially, I mean, you could do a blog post, everything I know about yeast, but even that might be too broad. So you might want to focus on, how to store your yeast, what's the difference between liquid and dry, what are the benefits and pros and cons of each, for example. How to keep your yeast happy, thinking about temperatures, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What to do when your yeast won't cooperate.
Yeah.
And how to harvest it, as well as this whole big area of the various types of yeast.
Yeah.
I mean, how many types of yeast are there?
Oh, good grief. There's as many types of yeast as there are beers.
So we're probably talking hundreds or thousands.
Yeah.
So I think you've got enough content here
Yeah.
to extract, enough angles here to extract probably a whole blog's worth of content.
Yeah, I'm going to be writing for the rest of my life.
About homebrew.
About homebrew.
Doesn't get much better than
What's
that.
not to like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson here is to take your big topic and then just drill down. And when you're thinking about what your blog post will be or what your story will be, this is the level you want to be looking at. You want to be looking at the offshoots and the offshoots of offshoots that will give you your angle. And I think this has given you some great ideas for content.
It has.
Great.
Yes. Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing the blog.
I need to get writing.
Yeah, okay.
I've got to go.
Okay,
I've got to
all right.
write this stuff.
All right, thank you. So there you go. I'm Dr. Claire Lynch. Subscribe to the channel for more quick writing tips.